Hi, everybody. We're back today with another top 10 acting list. This time it's Robert De Niro. All four of us decided, hey, he's a legend on the screen, a great method actor. He specializes in inhabiting a character like no one else, really, whether it be physically or from the inside out. When you see these Robert De Niro performances, you never forget him. He's been in so many great movies. Some of the best of the last 50 years, let's put it that way. When he came on the screen in the late 60s in some B movies and then eventually Boxcar Bertha, Mean Streets, and from there, he's been an icon in the film industry. So we're going to do a top 10 Robert De Niro films. I'm here with my movie crew. We've got Brian, AYBL Maine. Make sure you sub his channel up. Doc, who's been with me from the beginning. And of course, JJ, our new guy. Glad to have him. JJ's 22 explosive hits. Make sure you sub his channel as well. All great to have all three of you back. It's been a few weeks, so we're going to dive in. We're going to go in this order. We're going to go Brian, Doc, JJ, and myself. We're going to do 10 through 6. Then we're going to go 5 through 2, and then we'll save our number 1 at the end. So, Brian, kick it off, please, with your 10 through 6.
Okay. These number 10 and number 9 were kind of like the last couple ones I decided on. The cream kind of rose to the top pretty quickly on this one. I do have from 1990, I've got Awakenings with his portrayal as Leonard Lowe, based on the autobiographical life of Oliver Sacks, who did some research into L-Dopa and how it might help catatonic patients. And I thought De Niro in this was, I mean, he, at first, the demands of the role, but how he came out of his shell, he knows how much to put of himself in there and how much, and he eased into it. He just didn't all of a sudden say, oh, wow, I can move around and everything's fine now. Right. He knew to do it very, reserved. He did a fantastic job. And there was nothing more heartbreaking in that role when the patient started to deteriorate again. You can start to see, Robert's character start to shake a little bit more and a little bit more to the point that where he was no longer moving at all. He did a fantastic role in that. I always said, I said, man, as you think about someone like De Niro, when he mixes up his acting, he'll go from a role like this, and you have something like Stanley and Iris, and then you'd have something like Cape Fear, and the guy can do it all. So, absolutely. And he'll do it in a short amount of time. He's just great. Number 9 for me, this was one that, I was kind of iffy on at first, but I went back and watched it and I thought he was in it enough. I got Silver Linings Playbook, where he plays the senior Pat Solitano, the father of Bradley Cooper's character, who, suffers from bipolar disorder. And the father, it's kind of one of these obtuse fathers from Philadelphia that doesn't want to get overly involved in all the stuff that his kid goes through. He just wants his kids to like football. I figured Rich would appreciate that more than anybody else. And more than that, he's got to like the Philadelphia Eagles.
Eagles.
I remember,
don't know why.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy JJ.
I thought he did a great job in this as the father and the whole cast. I think all 4 actors actually in this movie. All 4 actors. I think it was the first movie since Reds that had all 4 actors actually get nominated from the movie. I thought it was great. He did a fantastic job.
Every one of them.
Number 8 for me, I know we kind of just touched on it probably before the cameras were rolling. I actually do have The Untouchables from 1987. I mean, kind of a smaller role where he plays Al Capone. It's funny how people don't even get my movie references a lot of the times, but even more so this one. I was president of Little League one time, and I was holding a meeting, and I actually picked up one of our baseball bats, and I'm walking around the table around my coaches, and I'm going, enthusiasms. And nobody understood what the joke was. Nobody's like, what the hell is he talking about?
That's funny.
I was like, man, I'm sitting on an island all unto myself. I thought he did a great job as Al Capone. He kind of immersed himself into that role.
Yeah.
I probably agree with you, Rich. He wasn't in the movie enough. I felt like if he'd give me some more Capone, I would have been like, yeah, I love this stuff. This has been great.
But it's such a great movie, though. It is a top-notch film.
Yes.
It is a top-notch film. I love it. So, number 7 for me, I've got a movie that I had to go back and watch during this time, and I found it. strangely eerie. The parallels between this movie and Joker was king of comedy.
Oh yeah,
it's like it's almost like Robert De Niro was forced to take on Jerry Lewis's role in Joker for some reason. It's just really strange about this. You know, when I went back and watched the movie, I go, this plot seems really familiar. And he did a great job. This Rupert Pumpkin guy he's mentally disturbed. He thinks he has this established relationship with, Jerry Lewis's character, who's kind of like, runs this nighttime television show, and and just mentally disturbed. He ends up getting Sandra Bernhard to help him, like, kidnap him so that they could hold him for ransom just to get airtime to go on there and do his schlock or whatever. It's just it's an odd movie, but it's a great movie. I thought it was really dark, very funny. I liked it. And finally, at number 6, I've got, even though he never received any nominations for this, I think everybody was really strong in this movie, but maybe not anybody standing out enough, is probably, when I look back and looked at it again, was Goodfellas from 1990. We played Jimmy Conway, the friend, the lifetime friend of, Joe Pesci's character and Ray Liotta's character. I always make Ray Liotta jokes now, because he does those Zantac, he does those friggin' Xanax commercials, and I'm like, ever since I can remember, I always wanted to be a non-smoker. I mean, I try to want to make fun of him like that, but that's another iconic role that I just feel like maybe that character wasn't in the movie enough to be able to get that nod that maybe he deserved, and I think it's because there was just so much talent in the film. So I got Goodfellas just for that role there, all the way at 6.
Very nice. Yeah, I like all those movies you mentioned. A couple of them will show up on my list, and some in my honorable mentions. What do you have, Doc, on your 10 through 6?
Yeah, I thought same idea. Brian, you had a couple there that you went through in your first 5 there, and some of them are late cuts for me as well. They're honorable mentions as well. So my number 10 starts off with, I think, your number 8, Brian. So it's The Untouchables for me. The list I have, and I might as well just, preface this by saying, maybe not the order I would watch these movies, De Niro's movies. I mean, I'm just ranking them the way I think they probably are looked at. And some I have a lot more respect for than others, and it just might not show in that list. But let's face it, the guy's made like 80 movies here or something like that, and we could have 50 different movies on our list here. So, right. Yeah, maybe the ranking order might be the surprising part, but it's really personal to me in one sense. So it's just the way I see things. So, jumping back in, The Untouchables, I have at number 10. For a lot of what Brian says, I mean, playing Capone at this era it's a fantastic movie. And yes, there's so many quotable ones. The baseball scene is definitely one, or, a knife to a gunfight and everything else that Connery has. And there's some great lines in that movie anyway. So, and I've got the other half of my life is all Italian, so I say it quite often. So it's, The Untouchables was number 10 for me. Geez, you guys sounded like you guys had these rings ringed off like you're in a heartbeat, man. I had a tough time putting these in order. I'll tell you that right now. So just the way it was for me. Number 9 for me, it's A Bronx Tale.
Oh, yeah.
I have loved this movie since it came out, to be honest with you. And I had no problem going back to revisit this one, and just really, it's a fantastic movie, man. Chaz Palminteri wrote this movie. De Niro directed it. And Chaz is in it a lot, and De Niro's almost not in it enough for me in one sense either, but I love his character so much in the movie that it makes my top 10. It's, to me, a top 10 De Niro flick, and that's kind of why I put it there, because I think it ranks that high for me. So a great story about witnessing something, it's mob undertones for De Niro is everywhere, right? So Bronx Tale is a really good flick if you haven't seen it.
He's a bus driver, right? Is that right?
Yeah, he's a bus driver with his kid.
It's been a while since I love the movie too, and the fact that he directed it would get extra points for me. But
yeah, and Palminteri wrote it.
I know he did. Yeah,
that was shot in my neighborhood in Queens at the time. Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah. Very cool.
I'm glad you put it on your list, because I did not want it to get overlooked. It's a great movie.
Thanks, man. Number 8 for me. I just love a lot of things about this movie. It's Heat for me. De Niro and Pacino working together here, that probably brings up the list a little further for me than maybe just as a standalone if it was just him. But and Kilmer in this movie is fantastic as well. So
yep.
I think the ensemble cast with De Niro in it and the movie itself, I think we all know what happens in the movie Heat. It's a bank robbery and a robbery gang here. And these guys, let's face it, there's no whole bars on how far they're willing to go to do what they got to do. I don't know. There's just something about that movie, man. That's like I said, we talked about this movie before. It's 3 hours, almost like 2.5. It's a Michael Mann movie, man. You might as well buckle in. You're going to be there for a while anyway. Michael
Exactly.
Mann, so,
and it's visually
but
beautiful too. The way
it's awesome to look at. The screenplay is fantastic.
And him and Pacino aren't in it that much together. That's the
no, not together. I think they got that iconic scene where they're saying, at the restaurant was one scene for sure.
They play off each other, but they're not in the scenes. That's what makes it amazing.
Right.
But I think overall, as a movie itself, once again, I threw it in there. That's a top 10 De Niro flick for me, man. What can I tell you? That's the way I look at it. Number 7, I got Casino at number 7 for me. He's in this one a lot, actually. So, and this is going to come down to personal preference. Now, here we go. So 7 down for me is just the way it is. Casino's a fantastic flick. I love everything about it. Pesci and him are great. I find Stone in this movie to be a fantastic, lead actress in this flick, man. It's when I get acting like that, and it just attracts me so much to the movie that I just cheer these things up as I go. So Pesci's fantastic, De Niro's fantastic, and Stone's fantastic, and I like the whole story behind the Casino movie anyway. So some of it is a little repetitive as far as historical things go with shall we say, De Niro and Pesci and stuff like that as far as characters go, but I can live with that because I can watch that movie at any time. So number 7 for me. Number 6. Now this one might surprise you guys, so I'm sorry. I'm sure you guys all have this way higher, and maybe in the top, like 1 or 2 or 3 or something for sure. But for me, it's Taxi Driver here at 6.
I'm surprised it made your list at all because I know you're not a huge fan of it.
I'm not a huge. I respect a lot of things about the movie, and I do respect De Niro in the movie. Let's face it, this is kind of groundbreaking when it came out for a story like this in one sense.
Exactly.
I'm not the keenest on the pace of this movie in one sense. I find it, it's not a move along movie, and I can live with those kind of movies as long as it's got me enthralled. De Niro's the one that keeps you in it. Like I said, there's some other parts in this movie I'm not too keen on, but I respect the movie for what it is, especially for the time that it came out. I think, you can go back and look at it and stuff like that. I think it gets a lot of praise for what it is right now, but I almost want to put it in one sense, and I don't want to say the wrong thing here. I think it gets a lot of praise even nowadays, but almost too much praise for what it is at the time. But I think at the time it was groundbreaking and everything else, but I don't see it as the same pedestal that a lot of other people do.
It's independent film at every stretch of the way. That's what makes it so good for me. I mean, it was obviously shoestring. And
you feel like it is a neo-Western now, Doc?
Sorry?
Yeah. Do you feel like it is a neo-Western now?
I'm going neo-Western, buddy. That's my number 6. I'm coming in with Taxi Driver. I think we all know what the movie's about. So, and De Niro's fantastic in the movie. I'm not going to get around
it's one of his best roles.
It's a top 10 De Niro flick, man, for sure.
Yep. All right, cool. Very nice. JJ, what do you have for us?
Okay, just real quick, people, the sweatshirt I'm wearing right here is for Films at Home. Just want to give him a plug. He does a great job. It's a great channel. He promotes physical media. He's keeping that physical media alive. We're all going streaming these days. He goes to 4K, Blu-ray, DVDs, equipment, gives you total reviews on them. I want to congratulate him. He just had a baby. So congrats to Jeff there on that. And just wanted to give you a plug. He was very interested in our Newman one, so I wanted to give a plug for this one. Now he's going to be probably watching our De Niro one as well.
All right, we'll put a link in the description below too for everybody to check that out.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So my number 10 is The Untouchables. I went with The Untouchables. Again, it's that standout performance that's not very much screen time at all, but you walk away from that film remembering Robert De Niro as Al Capone. He became Al Capone. I think people's vision of Al Capone, and I think is it Tom Hardy that just played him recently? I don't think you can ever take that image away, and that's who he'll always be compared to. And the amazing part about it, he was only in there for a bit of the film. It was more Sean Connery and Kevin Costner the entire film.
Right.
So that really stood out to me. Number 9, I went with Awakenings. Him and Robin Williams just played off each other amazingly, and Robin Williams played a different character, and it gave me hope. I know people know this or not about the film, about Penny Marshall and his film history with her, but he was actually set to be big. He was ready to play it. He did a skateboarding scene and everything. Went and learned how to skateboard, and he was ready to do the film. And for some reason, it got switched around to be Tom Hanks. So then they worked together later on Awakenings. And that relationship with him and Penny Marshall and Robin Williams, it just showed so much in that performance, how he evolved. I mean, it started off with he was now awake, and then he de-evolved into this character and those twitches. And the twitches, it takes a certain actor to do a twitch. It really does, because that twitch will take away from the character and you'll be distracted. You weren't. You were into you. The more he twitched, the more you were into him and what he wanted to learn from me. It was amazing. So anyways, my number 8 is Goodfellas. He is amazing. I thought that film just got gypped big time, and I really thought that his performance in there, again, his performance was the one I remember the most in the movie as being that mobster. It's like who played Henry Hill. I really thought that performance of his really stuck out. Number 7, I went with Heat. Again, Michael Mann, yeah, you're right. You're along for the ride. But that performance with him and Pacino, and it was like that same thing again with The Godfather, where it was like these two worlds and these different people are after each other, and they had the scene they have together. To me, is just it makes the whole movie for me. I was like, I have to rewind that scene and watch it again every time it's on because it is so amazing and so compelling, that performance. And again, you're right, Val Kilmer and everybody else is great too. And number 6, I don't know if I'll be different in this one, but I went with Cape Fear. Cape Fear, he just buried himself into that role. I mean, he became that character. And that is, I mean, we all know it's kind of not Robert De Niro at all, but he became this psychopath that was just intriguing on Nick Nolte and his family, and just moving in on it and recreated a character that was already done in black and white many, many, many years ago. Recreated that character for me to the point where I was just so enveloped. I remember I actually got to see that in a critics showing at Universal, and you were part of the school newspaper, and you got to do the review. 1,000 pen lights in the room because all the critics were taking notes. And I just remember all of us, and the critics too, were just like, with the cinematography and the way they shot him and all those stuff that he had on him, it was just amazing, an amazing performance.
And then before you move on, what? Do you like his version better than Mitchum's?
I do, yes. But maybe it's just my age. That's, I a lot of times black and white. If I'm that way, if I get stuck on something, I like it the original. So like, it took me a long, just to give you perspective on me, Brian, it took me a long time to like Father the Bride with Steve Martin. Because I liked Elizabeth Taylor and Spencer Tracy's version so much that was it took me forever to like it. I do like it now, but it took me forever. That's just how I get that in my brain. I get that how I am. Just real quick, I want to just interject before we get over to Rich. I had the opportunity to meet Robert De Niro. I was taking a Spike Lee Film Institute class in 1992, and I got to meet Samuel Jackson. I got to meet Joao Lee. Spike was there a couple of times, and it was Saturday morning, and it was him. But I was a college crazy kid, and in New York, because bars closed at 2 a.m. here in Wisconsin, but in New York they closed at 4. I was out all night, crashed, slept in. I missed the entire thing, and this day I regret missing Mr. Robert De Niro. I could have actually met him and had pictures and autographs and everything. So just want to mention that. So go ahead, Rich.
Very good, thank you. I have most of the films that you guys have talked about. I have one different one that I'm going to hit on here. My number 10 is Casino. I love the movie. I think there's a little bit too much narration in it for me. Instead of the action unfolding, they're telling you what's going on a lot in the movie, and that bothered me a little bit. I love the dynamic between De Niro and Pesci, and De Niro and Sharon Stone. There's some great acting between them. This is a detailed examination of the inner workings of the Las Vegas casinos. So they give you all the ins and outs and the background and stuff.
If I could add, Rich, to the other performance, I think in that movie too, and that was made my honorable mention, but the other one that I thought was great too was, believe it or not, him and Don Rickles.
Don Rickles, yeah.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Yeah. He surprised me when he actually showed up on screen in that movie and pulled it off. Very believable, his character. My number 9 is Cape Fear. I had to put it on the list just for the insane performance by De Niro, and I agree he's better than Mitchum. I love Robert Mitchum. Don't get me wrong, but De Niro added such a twist to this movie. Max Cady, the convicted rapist. He's just a terror. He takes not Jessica. What's her name? Jessica Lange, the wife. Juliette Lewis, the daughter. That whole thing with trying to seduce her. It's creepy and just it bordered on sick. I mean, pedophile stuff, really.
Right.
Very menacing. He's got that Southern accent. He's calling out to the Nick Nolte character.
Counselor,
right? Counselor. Oh, but that Southern drawl, it makes your skin crawl. His performance, and great direction again by Scorsese in that film. That right down to the last scene. Number 8 is one a couple of you guys have mentioned. That's Heat, the great heist film directed by Michael Mann. The main reason it's on the list at all, well, other than being a great film, is the showdown between the two great actors, Pacino and De Niro. Even though they don't have that many scenes together, they have 2, I think. One at the diner restaurant, and then the chase and the shootout at the end.
Right.
Great stuff. I like De Niro here. He's the leader, the mastermind of that whole crew, with Val Kilmer, John Voight's involved, Tom Sizemore. The women are good in this film, Ashley Judd and Amy Brenneman as well. It's a great cast. One of the great cops and robber movies that I've seen, and it's very tense. Brilliant direction, cinematography, the whole 9 yards. But De Niro, again, brings a quiet strength to that film. Number 7 is the one I haven't heard mentioned yet, and this is a film from 1993 called This Boy's Life. Robert De Niro. He plays this abusive stepfather of Leo DiCaprio, set in the 1950s in the Pacific Northwest. De Niro is a bully who has this inferiority complex. He takes his frustrations out on the son, out on his wife, Ellen Barkin. Another despicable, unlikable, creepy character that De Niro has created here. A study in human behavior. What makes this guy tick? Why is he such a mean, vindictive, childish person who doesn't give anybody a break? And that there's a scene in there with De Niro in the Boy Scout uniform that I always go back to too, where he's sitting there. It looks like a real putz. But number 6, Goodfellas. This is further down on my list than it should be because it's a great movie. But this is really Ray Liotta's movie. He's doing the narration. It's about Henry Hill, his character. De Niro and Pesci and Sorvino are along for the ride. They're all great. Don't get me wrong. But De Niro, again, he's a made mob guy this time. He eventually gets ratted out by Henry Hill at the end and sent to prison. It gives you the racketeering, the extortion, the robbery, the career criminal element, murder. These guys would not think twice about shooting you between the eyeballs. It's just up close and personal. It's business as usual, as they say. It's one of the best mob movies ever made. Yes. I don't quite put it at the level of The Godfather, but it's a notch below. Fascinating characters, great storytelling, the stylized direction with the Scorsese with the music and the different cuts that he makes and the helicopters and the paranoia. It's an absolute must-see. De Niro, riveting as usual. One of his best performances, I think. And if he was on it a little more, he probably would have been nominated for that role.
Still say the film was gypped.
Yeah, it was, and it lost Best Picture to Dances with Wolves. We've got to keep that in mind too. All right, so that takes us to through our 10 through 6s. We're going to go 5 through 2, and we're going to go back to Brian for that.
So we're going to go all the way 5 through 2, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so at number 5, I've got something that's already been mentioned. I've got Cape Fear. It's got him playing Max Cady. He got an Oscar nomination for this movie. I will say that I too prefer his rendition of Max Cady over Mitchum's. However, I prefer the 1961 version over the 1991 version, only because I think that the all-around cast was better. Gregory Peck was much better in that counselor's role than Nick Nolte was. I've just never been a big fan of Nolte, and he's always kind of blasé to me in some of his roles, and I never got into him. Peck just did a much better job at that. So I like the 61 film better. I like De Niro's Katie better. So number 4, I've got Raging Bull. I know in 1980 where he played Jake LaMotta. He did get a Oscar nomination and a win for this role, and deservingly so. Just a fantastic boxing movie. I mean, just Scorsese, the way he films it, it's just raw and dirty. I mean, he gets you right inside that ring, and you can see, like, you know, the sweat pouring off of these guys, and it's almost like, you know, even though it's like this the black and white, it's almost like you just feel the blood like hitting you in the face that's coming off of these guys' noses and everything when they're in the ring. It's fantastic. He does a great job in it. Even like how he transforms himself toward the end of the film, where he's basically playing, you know, a parody of himself as a kind of a stand-up kind of goofball kind of guy, is also well. I like at number 3, I've got The Deer Hunter, where he plays Michael. He also got a Best Oscar nomination. I don't know what's wrong with my voice tonight. That movie is just so great. All the performances are so great. I think maybe he gets overshadowed quite a bit because Walken's performance is just so out of this world.
Right.
And that's probably the only reason. He did get the nomination. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the other nominees, whether he deserved the win or not, but it just felt like, yeah,
that was John Boyd.
I think he did. Yeah, is that right?
John Boyd for Coming Home.
I probably still feel Deer Hunter in this one, I guess. So that's my number 3. My number 2, sorry, Doc, I've got Taxi Driver, the neo-Western film of 1976. Best Oscar nomination, obviously, for playing Travis Bickle. I think that, again, it's a Scorsese, so it's down and gritty and it's dirty and it touches on so many subject matters that, you know, were really taboo, you know, prior to the movie itself, and it just kind of opened the doors for what filmmakers could be willing to do in subject matters that they could be willing to try on screen. Overall, I thought it was just an overall great movie, and his performance is just out of this world. I mean, as a guy who's clearly got issues.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So that's my number 2.
Very good, Doc.
Very good,
all right, Doc.
Hey, that's good, buddy. It's all good. I was going to say, I definitely agree. Now, Cape Fear did not make my top 10, but I will say that if I was to have an assessment, I'd lean toward your way there, Brian, more than I think the other fellas there. I do like maybe De Niro a little bit better than Mitchum. It's close.
Yeah.
But I definitely like the 61 version movie way better. Nick Nolte, I'm the same boat as you, buddy. I can only go so far with that one personally. But pretty good rundown there, buddy. So I'll do my 5 through 2. Here we go. So
yep.
And then I'll comment on my 4 when we get there. Let me tell you. So my number 5 is it's Once Upon a Time in America.
Nice.
Number 5.
Good, nice choice.
That was a good call there, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. This movie's friggin' fantastic, man. This is like he's mob movies, crime movies, and everything else that De Niro's in. He's kind of known for it in one sense too. I mean, let's face it, he's built a career around this and some comedies that we haven't heard, and probably maybe not on the top 10 list, but he's got some pretty funny movies out there too.
Yeah. Let me ask you a quick question, Doc. Which version do you like best?
I don't know, the 3-hour one, man, whatever that is. There,
3-hour, okay.
Yeah. That's the only one I've ever watched.
Versions of it, so yeah.
Yeah, there is too. There was another release. You're right.
Mm-hmm. The theatrical wasn't the same as the one.
That's right. And they cut it down for that. And there's no way, man. You need the Das Boot of this one. So, Once Upon a Time in America. What a great mob movie, man. I love loads about this flick, man. Especially the way it goes back in time and everything else. And like, I'm not the biggest James Woods fan either, but what a great role for him too. And this
he was good in that, yeah.
He's really, really good in this movie, man. And let's face it, these guys are ruthless, and from kids all the way through, man.
From children on through. Yep.
I don't know if you guys know. I have my own beefs with The Irishman, but this is done the way I think a movie like this should have been done anyway. I think showing the whole time scale for something like this on a mob guy. This Once Upon a Time in America, definitely a top 10 De Niro flick for me, without a doubt. So put it in at number 5. My number 4, you guys have already all mentioned it. And I'll tell you this right now, it comes down once in a while to me on personal things. So this and my number 2 almost flopped. I'll say this right now. So, and you'll know what it is when we get there too. But number 4 for me is Goodfellas. So, yeah, I think it's Rich. I think you probably maybe summed it up pretty good there, man. You know, there's Godfather 2, and then Goodfellas. Probably my top 3. You know, if we get right down to it. But I waver there on one of those once in a while. So, Goodfellas is the ultimate, you know, mob movie in one sense. And De Niro, yeah, sure, it runs around Ray Liotta, but a lot of these movies that we're going to talk about, you know, De Niro might not even be the driving force in these movies either. So, I mean, he's definitely making my top 5 with Goodfellas. One of my all-time favorites, if you want the truth. So, I think we all know what it's about anyway. So, Goodfellas is just a classic. My number 3, same as yours, Brian, Deer Hunter. Yeah, I guess in one sense you might be right, Brian, where, you know, De Niro gets overlooked a little by walking in his thing. I still think De Niro's the driving force in this movie in one sense, just because he flows through the whole movie. I love that part about it for De Niro in this flick, man. This movie's fantastic, man. I mean, you know, we talked about it on our last go when we did these movies in the 70s. You know, those 3 acts in that movie, man, are spectacular. I mean, that's pretty high-end movie making for a story that you're telling like this at that time, and the way the acting in this, man, I just freaking fantastic, man. And Deer Hunter, a classic from the 70s and a classic De Niro flick you have to watch. Definitely number 3. Number 2, so there you go. It's The Godfather Part 2, guys. So that's where it lands for me. So I flip and flop between Goodfellas and The Godfather Part 2 once in a while in my head on how I do these kind of movies. So The Godfather Part 2 is just, you know where we're at here. You guys are going to all say this movie very soon anyway. So what can I tell you? You guys have it higher. I get it, probably. I'm guessing right now that Brian does. So maybe not.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Joaquin Bullwinkle's still on the table.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Mary Shelley's Frankenstein's hanging.
Go time. Him and Nadine
Rocky Bull, man. I'd say I'm looking for it. So, but yeah, Godfather Part 2. You know, it's a classic flick. Yeah, I wish De Niro was in it more for the De Niro aspect of this list that we're doing. Right. But let's face it, it's a classic flick, and you know, one of the all-time greats, man.
Can't argue with it. No. What do you have, JJ? What's your 5 through 2?
Number 5 for me is The Deer Hunter. Again, Walken and John Cazale. Great performances in that movie. It shows what Michael Cimino, if he's wheeled in, he's an amazing filmmaker, as we all know from the Heaven's Gate disaster. But prior to that, when he was reeled in, he was amazing. And the 3 acts of that film are just unbelievable. And De Niro just plays that role so well and just buries himself in that part and just mesmerizes me. The next one I have is King of Comedy. Quick story. I got to this movie, I think when it came out, and my mom, we went to a single theater called the Downer Theater in Milwaukee, and the ticket taker was gone, and my mom and I just walked into the movie, and because my mom couldn't pay anybody, she just said, okay, we're gonna go sit down, and we sat down and I remember even being as a kid, again, this one movie just kind of sticks with you, and his performance has in that movie and the way, you know, they kind of portrayed it like you were saying, the Joker. That was what kind of reminded me of in reverse, and him. The soundtrack again is amazing. I just got a hold of that. His performance and the whole him and Jerry Lewis and Sarah Bernhardt. The film was amazing and just totally kind of went off the. When I look at the Scorsese history, kind of went, whoa, Scorsese went in a different direction here with this one. Sure. So that was great. And now the top 3, I have to say. Because I was a film school student, film school major. These are the 3 films I did. My last 3 are all the ones I did papers on. So the first one starting off is Godfather Part 2. I did shot-by-shot analysis on that film. I did a paper that's probably this thick, and I had to hand it to a professor on that movie. But besides that, he is an amazing performance. You know, you have to consider with this movie is that Marlon Brando had this role locked. That was him. I mean, people thought of Marlon Brando, he's the Godfather, and he's coming in. Not speaking English and playing this role. How more amazing do you get as an actor and be able to just shine when you only have subtitles, you're speaking Italian, and a lot of people turn you off for that. I mean, when you think about it. I mean, I see people see foreign films and they're just turned off. They don't want to watch it. So he mesmerizes that whole film, and the way that he comes back for revenge of that guy. Oh my God, that scene to me is just film genius. It's how that came in. I've watched it both because I've done papers in the movie. I've watched both the Godfather edit where they put it in sequence, and I've watched the edit where they actually do the actual movie. And both times his performance is just shines out in all the different versions I've seen. And number 2 is Taxi Driver. I remember having to do a Laserdisc analysis of this one. We had to do what's called shot by shot analysis, where we had to watch the first 3 shots and tell the first 3 shots pertain to the rest of the movie. My British professor, Claire Goodman, worked at the BBC. She was the one who made us do this stupid assignment. But I remember seeing this film over and over again, and I was so mesmerized as a whole of his role, how he buried himself again into the part, and he was just nuts and on the edge, and all these different people that were around him, and how he was just getting psycho for this chick and everything else, and then helping this girl out, and it was like, oh my God, this film's just going down, and it was independently made on a very little budget. The soundtrack's amazing, the editing, but his performance just made the film. That's it. Whenever I think of Taxi Driver, I just think of Travis Bickle is Robert De Niro. That's my number 2.
Absolutely. All right, cool. We have pretty much the same films, just in a different order. My number 5 is Godfather Part Two. Even though it's a supporting acting role, like you said, he studied tapes of Marlon Brando, the original characterization, to get it down, the little nuances and the mannerisms. He speaks almost exclusively Italian in this film, like JJ was saying. The rise and fall of Vito, how he gained his power in New York City's Little Italy. Comes over as this immigrant orphan, really, on a boat, and becomes the most powerful man in the mafia. I mean, how does that happen? And they show you how it happens. With De Niro as a young man, he's a family man. They emphasize the importance of family and loyalty in his early life, and it carries on to his later years. It's a perfect role, and he deserved the Oscar for that, no question about it.
Just a quick word. His eyes during the assassination scene when he takes over, when he has the gun, and his eyes. To me, that was just what that whole film. I mean, he showed with his eyes because he couldn't speak English. It was amazing.
Yeah, I like when he goes back to the old country too, and he sticks that guy and sort of the knife and twists it a little bit. It was awesome stuff.
Antonio Antolini.
The tomatoes.
Yeah, my number 4 is, I think, the most underrated film of all of these, and that's The King of Comedy. Rupert Pupkin. I remember seeing this in the movie theater when it came out in '83 as well. And, I couldn't believe what I was watching. This misfit who's obsessed with becoming a stand-up comedian. He's so desperate that he stalks the Jerry Lewis character and kidnaps him in the taxi there with Sandra Bernhard. And Jerry Lewis is good in the role too, as he plays his late night talk show host. He's basically doing, I think they tried to get Johnny Carson, but Carson didn't want to make the film. So Jerry Lewis was next in line. And an unforgettable movie. Pupkin's living in this fantasy world. His basement is set up with these cardboard characters and a couch, and he's like, "Hey, Mom!" in the middle of he's doing a show down there. He's completely insane, and it speaks to the importance of mental health and the obsession with celebrity. How important it is for that 15 minutes of fame too. All that stuff's in here. De Niro. An unforgettable character, creepy, unsettling, whatever word you want to use, but I think it's one of his most overlooked performances. Doesn't get a lot of talk today as it did back then. Number 3, I think most of us had this at number 3, and that's The Deer Hunter by Michael Cimino. What a landmark film this was. Another one I saw on the big screen, and it was like, you knew these guys. You're at the bar with these guys. You're shooting pool. You're singing along with these guys before they go to war, and then mayhem ensues. And then, Michael Cimino, or Robert De Niro's character, comes back from the war itself, and he's really never going to be the same. Traumatized, what he saw over there, what his friends went through. The Russian roulette scenes alone would brain damage anybody. The camaraderie of these guys. I love the way they set you up with all the camaraderie in the first third, going to the wedding, going deer hunting, going to the bar, just the hijinks. And then they hit the war scenes the physical and emotional toll that takes on each one of those guys.
Right.
And De Niro's the one that has to come back and try to live in that town again in one piece, but he's scarred forever. And his performance shows you that. So it has to be high on my list. Number 2 is Taxi Driver, Travis Bickle. Again, I saw this in 1976. I was 19 years old in the movie theater. It's one of the first rated R movies I happened to see. And
it's extreme.
It blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. As this lone wolf Vietnam vet, a great character study of urban alienation. He's taken this job because he's got insomnia, and there's something not right there, and he's on that slippery slope into madness in its way. He wants to clean up the city, self-appointed vigilante. He wants to be a hero so he can feel better about himself, I guess. He goes into a grocery store and shoots a guy down there. He wants to take care of the pimps and the pushers and maybe even a politician along the way. There's the teenage prostitute played by Jodie Foster that he intercedes there, and it's just one thing after the next. An unbelievable performance. And I'll always bring this up when we talk about this. It shows you how disturbed he was when he takes Sybil Shepherd to that porn theater. Yeah. Unbelievable. on the first date,
on the ranking of first dates, that's not where I would. Yeah.
Yeah. He goes in there and sort of haphazardly charms her with his little shy thing, and then I'll take you out, and he takes her right to the smut film the first time out, and she runs out of there with her tail between her legs. It's just it's perfect because it fits what that character would do. So that's number 2, and can't wait to see what all you guys have as your number 1. I think a couple of us are going to have the same, and maybe
just one quick thing I want to interject with.
Yeah, go ahead.
On Taxi Driver. What I love about that film too is it leaves you in the end with going, is he the hero, the villain, what? And because the way they read that letter in the end and everything, you're like, how did they, is he really? And again, that's a question I had to write, on my final. But I still remember that it really has the brain rolling in the end. So I just wanted to point that out.
And he won't take the money from Sybil Shepherd in the back seat either. Remember, he sort of throws it back there.
Yep.
So it reminds me of that song by Harry Chapin, Taxi, Keep the Change or whatever. There's a parallel there. Anyway, Brian, your number 1 Robert De Niro film of all time.
Well, I just got recently asked, this weekend, somebody asked me, because I guess on HBO Max now they have Citizen Kane, and a friend of mine had just watched it. Lisa Wilcox, she's a friend of mine. She said, "Brian, what do you think of Citizen Kane?" I go, "Well," I said, "I had to dissect that damn film for 6 weeks in the film school."
So did I. So did everybody.
I said, "I'll tell you, maybe it's one of those. It's a film in which it's important because of the types of things that go into filmmaking to learn those things. It's important." I go, but I thought it was a subpar story, to be quite honest. I didn't think it was all that as far as a movie. So in my number 1, I consider both a good film and a good movie, and that's The Godfather 2 from 1974. I think the filmmaking is really good in it. I think even though you're dealing with 2 different time periods, the transitions don't feel forced in any way. They don't feel weird in any way. That the Coppola does a great job of keeping you interested in both things, and it's not like you're still worried about what's going on in the present. You're captivated on what's going on in the past, and you'll get back to the present eventually. Does a great job of balancing.
Correct.
And I thought it was fabulous.
You're never lost. You're never
It's
lost.
a great movie. Right. It's a great movie, and it's entertaining. And De Niro is just, he won for Best Supporting Actor here. I know it's only a supporting role, but I still felt that this is his best work. So that's how that's why I put it so high. I thought that Godfather 2, when people think of De Niro, I just feel like they'll put this right at the top of the list when they're talking about him.
Interesting.
Good pick, Brian.
Very good pick. I can't argue with it. What do you have, Doc?
Well, The Godfather was number 2, so this is my number 1. So if they're not thinking of that movie, maybe they're thinking of this one. I don't know. At the top of the list for De Niro, but I've got Raging Bull at number 1 for me. Yeah. Maybe could have went either way on that one, Brian. I don't know, but Raging Bull. The story of Jake LaMotta there that's told by Scorsese. I think there's a lot of, obviously, this is a classic flick, man. This is
Yeah.
what I probably consider De Niro's best flick. So that's why it's my number one. You know, this is a guy that's dealing with a lot of different things, man. You know, he's jealous. He's only got one speed. He's coming at you 1,000,000 miles an hour. It doesn't matter what it entails, right? So thinks his brother's screwing him over. Thinks his wife is screwing him over. He just doesn't have a good grip on what reality is in one sense. But, let me tell you, that guy could fight, and Jake LaMotta was one hell of a boxer too, man. And De Niro pulling this role off on all these different levels for what that character goes through, in the ring and outside the ring, and the emotional stuff that goes with it, and the speed it goes at for that guy internally in his head, man. It's a classic. Raging Bull's it's the first one I wrote down on the list when we did this, and it didn't move. So the other ones probably all moved 100 times, but this one wasn't moving. So Raging Bull is what I consider De Niro's best movie.
There you go. JJ, agree or disagree?
I agree. I went for my number one is Raging Bull. Also, I want to show I watched it. I did watch the Laserdisc version of the movie. This is the old-fashioned for audiences.
Nice.
For audiences that do not know what one is, because you are too young.
Cool.
That's a Laserdisc. It's like a big CD.
Woo! That's a nice
Awesome.
keepsake. Yeah.
Yes, it's my CAV. Here's how I went back and watched it. It's in 30 minutes, but what's really cool is that it's frame by frame. So it's not in, you can watch it actually frame by frame, shot by shot, and pause it and rewind. It's really cool. Anyways, we get back to technology. You have to consider this movie, 1980. And then in 1989, 90, Premiere Magazine, all the magazines, all the film critics, all of them started doing their top films of the 80s. And Raging Bull became number one in all those lists. And when you consider this, 1980 to all the films that came out between then and there, and this was still on their number one lists in that time period, amazing. And I mean, the film, he went through an amazing transformation in this film. In the research that I've done on this movie as well, I learned that he actually, he learned better, like we played Al Capone, to how to beef up, but he didn't beef up properly. He was eating crap and did nothing but, so he almost had heart palpitations, almost had heart attack in between making some of those film scenes when he was so huge. And then that body transformation that he had to go through for that role. I mean, obviously he's learned better since then. But I mean, that just shows what De Niro does to put himself into a role to transfer. I mean, we have makeup, you have people that can do that stuff, but no, he wants to be a part of that movie, and it worked. It's a black and white film. It's not color, and it stands out to you so much. The boxing films are like, forget Rocky, and I still think Stallone, when he made 3 and 4, he started actually copying a little bit of what he saw in that movie. That's what I think. But the way he just transformed into the character and the way he played off of Pesci in that movie, amazing. And the way that film was directed, edited, scored, it's a masterpiece in my opinion. And it's always stood out to me. It's a film that stands that litmus test for me. I never get bored with it. If I can watch that film over and watch that performance over and not get bored and see something new every time, you're making my number one. So that's my number one is Raging Bull.
So your Betamax didn't work is why you did the laser disc version, JJ?
No, my Betamax didn't work for that one. No, Laserdisc is what I had in college. I still have my retro Laserdisc in the other room. I should do a video at some time of all my Laserdisc.
Yeah.
Cool.
Raging Bull's my number one too, but it was close. I almost went with Taxi Driver. I love that movie so much, as dark and despairing and bleak as it is. But I went with Raging Bull because I think, as a filmmaker, it's a better made movie. I mean, you got Jake LaMotta here as the middleweight boxer in the 40s, portrait of self-destruction. This man is so full of rage and violence. He takes it out on the ring, but he's also taking it out on the people around him. His wife battered a little bit, a lot of it, and his brother, he's jealous, he's paranoid about what his brother's doing behind his back, and it just infuriates. I mean, then he goes in the ring and just annihilates people. That's why they call him Raging Bull, because he starts out with the ribs and stuff, and then he gets up to the head and just carves them to pieces. I mean, it's beautifully made. Scorsese takes you in the ring with some of these shots. The blood dripping on the ropes, the fans in the front row getting splattered. You feel like you're there.
You're in the ring, man.
Yeah.
You're in the ring.
Yeah.
The editing, like JJ said, it's first rate, black and white, doesn't matter. it's better in black and white because you can see every shade of gray. I mean, it's unbelievable. I like the acting dynamic here, especially between De Niro and Pesci, where they're having these arguments, and just every 4-letter word you can think of is combined together to come out with these outrageous accusations and stuff. It's just amazing, amazing stuff. It has to be number one, although 5 years ago I would have put Taxi Driver and Deer Hunter ahead of it, but now looking back, I think it's the best film Scorsese has made and the best one that De Niro's been in. So that's why it's number one for me. So just going through some stuff that we may not have talked about. I always like to hit on some honorable mentions. I'm trying to find my sheet. Oh, yeah.
I had Backdraft.
Yeah, there's a few.
You know, even though he was barely, for some reason, I really liked his character in it. Not as much as Donald Sutherland's character.
Yeah.
But I really did like his character in Backdraft.
Yeah, I did have Backdraft was on mine, and Casino was on mine.
Yeah. And so
I had Awakenings and The Untouchables, which you guys covered, and the Bronx Tale, which I'm glad somebody put in because he directed it as well. Meet the Parents for comedy. Jackie Brown, he plays a limited role in that, but he's very, very good in it. In the Quentin Tarantino movie.
Analyze this. He's really good. Not analyze that, but analyze this.
Analyze this. And there's a smaller movie called True Confessions with Robert Duvall from 1981, which I really like a lot. He plays a priest, a brother of a cop, and they're involved in some murder there in Los Angeles. So I think that's a very good film as well.
The Mission was another one that was on mine.
The Mission's a real good movie. I'm glad nobody put in what was the movie called? The Irishman, because I don't think it deserves to be on this list.
No.
It's number 85 out of his 84 movies.
a couple others.
I just think younger generations saw that movie and I was like, there's better De Niro films than that one.
Yeah, there's way better.
Yes.
Way better.
A couple other ones like Mean Streets didn't get any love, which Midnight Run got overlooked.
That was my last cut.
That was one of my last ones too.
What else? That's
Brian
pretty
knows
much
I love
it.
that one.
Yeah, I know. I had just seen it recently, and then what's his name turned around and died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grodin.
Yeah, that's right. Wag the Dog with Dustin Hoffman. He's in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Barry Levinson. That's a great movie.
Yeah, that's another one. I actually like him in the movie called The Score with Edward Norton. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not bad. I had Ronan higher on my list.
I like.
Nobody had Rocky and Bullwinkle, his creation. It's actually his creation too. That's the funny part.
Yeah.
Hey, he was the one that was like the big proponent. He wanted to play that part and he wanted to make that movie.
Wow.
For whatever reason.
And you mentioned Jackie Brown already, right, Rich?
Jackie Brown.
Yeah.
That whole dialogue between him and Bridget Fonda in the parking lot and stuff.
Fantastic scene, man. That whole scene in the mall. Yeah.
And then when they're left alone in the apartment, when Sam Jackson has to run out and they have a little rendezvous there with the marijuana or whatever. It's pretty cool.
Right.
Yeah, she asked him if he wants to fuck, and then it's like, 45 seconds later. I just got out of prison. He ain't gonna last long.
That's right.
Right there. That
was great. Tarantino writing and editing right there. That was
it. That was the highlight.
Bang on.
Anyway, I just want to thank again everybody for coming on. If you have some top 10 De Niro lists, we'd love to hear from you. I want to thank Brian, AYBL Maine, JJ's 22 Explosive Hits, sub their channels, Doc, aka Sean. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another look at another top 10 list. We're going to debate what it's going to be. But in the meantime, be sure to like, subscribe, leave your comments, sub these guys up. And until next time, we will see you. Take care, everybody. Peace.
Yeah, everybody.